Okay, Piss Week running fans, new video. This one's called How I Prepare for and Race 100k. So I will start with just a small clip from Seinfeld, which will be sort of very relevant to this video. So check out the video and I'll start my talk on this just after that.
Now, what does the little man inside you say? So you got to listen to the little man.
My little man doesn't know.
The little man knows all.
My little man's an idiot.
So that video talked about, the little man knows all, you got to listen to the little man. And I'll work into that, but basically that talks about the most powerful tool that you're going to have when you're preparing for and, running a race such as 100 kilometres. So as far as my preparation for 100 kilometres, I have a very basic preparation in that I don't have a training program. I don't clock any of my stats. I don't have Garmin. I don't have Strava. I don't have anything like that. I don't see any benefit to having them. Having all this data that's basically going to be irrelevant to me. People might think otherwise, but I'm better off without it. So Monday to Fridays, I do a single run of an afternoon. That will vary between 1 hour and an hour 20. It'll be the same time, so obviously give or take on that. I don't run dead on the time. It will vary by about 5 minutes per week. So 1 week I'll run 60 minutes for the 5 days, and then 65, and then 70, and so on. Within those runs, I like to do a hill in every one of them. If I can't run a hill, then I'll might do a slow incline or something, or just find a different track where it's sort of be a bit up and down. Certainly nothing that's completely flat. Mostly because a lot of the running that I will do for the higher distances, you almost don't have a flat piece of land. So, and you can run a flat piece of land any day of the week, any race. So I try and throw in a hill. I'm a big fan of hills, and people who run 100 metres through to 100 mile do hills. There's a saying, you run slower to run faster. Now, the thing with that is it might sound silly, but when you break it down, with a hill, you're running slower, but when you're running slower up that hill, you're working harder, and when you're working harder, you're getting stronger, and when you're getting stronger, you're going to get faster. That's how that works out. So I generally do all my stuff on trails, single track, hills, grass, whatever, and in that time, I'm generally focusing on my technique and what the body is telling me. So I'm checking, is my head up right? Are my shoulders down? How are my arms swinging? Are my hips, forward? Am I landing, landing soft? Am I landing off? And like the cadence of the leg turnover? Is the breathing right? Are the muscles okay? Are the joints okay? What's going on? And going back to that little man, that's where I'm feeding that information off. Extracting as much information as I can out of the little person inside of me who's got control of all of that, can tell me that whenever I need it. And it's also going to be the motivating factor as well. That little person's going to tell me what I need to know to pull out the best performance, which is going to be the most positive result. So that's primarily what I'm working on those 5 days. On the weekend, Saturdays I generally take off, and I might do the park run, 5K thing, but I don't classify that as a preparation run at all. That's just for shits and giggles. I don't see any benefit to it. It's just a bit of a stroll. So moving on to the Sunday is the main run for the week, and within that, still applying the same sort of stuff that I have done on the Monday to Friday. So it's technique, and it's breathing, and it's getting a comfortable pace and stuff like that. You're out there for a long time, so and that's what's going to happen in the race. So really, you're trying to simulate your race conditions or setup as much as possible. Obviously, running a lot slower, but you really want to. I find that I really want to throw in as many obstacles and what ifs as I can to be able to get myself ready for those sorts of things. So adding on to, I don't go out on a set course. I'll just take off, and if I'm running for 5 hours or 6 hours or whatever it is, get to a new bit, and do I want to go left, do I want to go right, do I want to go up that hill, and just work it out as I go along. It's really about the time on legs. It's you're going to be out there for a long time when you run 100k, and how you spend that time doesn't matter whether you're walking or running or hiking or whatever. So doing that, I find that I can focus a little bit more on the power hiking on the weekends, because I can throw in 2 or 3 or 4 plus hills, all of different elevations, and power hiking is a very important tool as well, because if you can get it right, you can power hike up a hill quicker than you're going to run it or walk it. So that's another good thing that I find I can work on and spend a bit of time on the weekends doing. The other thing too that is a big focus point on the weekends is getting your hydration and your nutrition right. So you want to be simulating on that run when you're going to be drinking and eating and that. So for me, I generally will take a drink. I have my race vest on, so I've got 2 bottles up front, and I might have stuff in the back. But as far as taking stuff on board, I'll generally drink anywhere between 20 and 30 every 20 and 30 minutes. And I'll generally take 1 gel an hour, depending on the electrolyte that I'm using. If I'm just using a basic electrolyte, I'll take 1 gel every sort of 45 minutes to an hour. If I'm using a specific brand, sometimes I might only take 1 gel every 3 hours. Just depends on what I take with me. But one bottle will have water in it, and one will have electrolyte, and I rotate between the two. You don't want to keep having the same drink over and over and over again. So getting that right as well is a key thing for your race day, because you don't want to go into the race and not have that planned out, and go in and try something new in the race, because more times than not it's going to go wrong. You're going to eat something that you haven't eaten in preparation, or you're going to try a different plan, and if you haven't tried it, chances are your body's not going to like it, or your stomach's going to play up, and then it's all sort of downhill from there. So that's basically what I work on. Once I get up to about 7 hours, it's generally about 5 or 4 weeks out, and then you sort of work back down. The last week that is of the race, I'll do 10 to 15 minutes, Runs, and that's just above walking pace. That's just turn the legs over, shake them out, you've done all the work, now you're ready to run and start that race. So moving on to the race, the racing of the 100 kilometres, I'll use the example of a loop course for this. Ones that have checkpoints in it and stuff like that might have 5 or 6 or 7, whatever it is, checkpoints. Slightly different, all different distances between them, but your goal in those ones, I find, just for covering that off, is you're focusing from checkpoint to checkpoint. What am I going to do between checkpoint 1 and 2? What am I going to take on to the next point? How long is it going to roughly take me, and stuff like that. But I might look at that in the future. So these ones with loops, it might be out and back sort of stuff, or it might be the same distance round and round and round. The most recent one I did, the Centennial Park Ultra in Sydney, it was 100k. It was an 880 metre out and back with 3.54 kilometre loops. There was you had a main aid station back through the start-finish line. There was a little chute off to the side where you went through. You could see crew, and there was a table. And there was another one about halfway around. So first thing I find is that you don't think about the distance. You know it's 100k. Don't think about it. Don't start counting down. I don't count down. Early on, don't go, I've got 99k, 98k, 97. It's just going to think, it's going to take me forever. Don't focus on that. I found that generally, if you don't have that out and back, and you're just going to do a loop, find out what you're going to do, what you're doing in that first loop, and then okay, it's going to take me roughly around that time to run each lap. And you don't have to focus on that too much unless you're really wanting to hit a time. But I set very low expectations, so I set out times that I know I can do. So it limits the negativity out of the run. So obviously your first goal is to finish. Anything beyond that's a bonus. And I think that's how you've got to tackle it. So I'll see what to do through the first lap. And so take a drink. I was taking a drink every sort of 3.5 kilometres or so, every 3.54. Taking a gel on every second lap, which was, sort of 7.1. And got that dialed in pretty early. Felt comfortable with it. And so I stuck with that. Knew I ran a comfortable pace. Technique was good. Everything's good. The first major point that I focused on was about through the first marathon. There's a big gap between, focusing on what you've done through 3.5k and what you've done through 43k. But I find it, once you've gone through that first marathon, you can reassess and you go back to that little man. Okay, how am I feeling? Do I need to change anything? We're moving into the second phase of the 100k. Have I run too hard? Am I breathing okay? Do I need to, am I landing too heavy on one foot? Are my arms swinging okay? Just a whole bunch of stuff like that I go back through and reassess. And you don't necessarily have to do that, but that's what I do. The time at that point is irrelevant, and you're not looking at it as if, I've got 57 k to go. You're not worried about that either. You push on forward because you're moving through that second period, that second block, pushing through to about 78, 79k is the second block that I work on. So within that, you've got your 50k. You're going through halfway. Take your split with a grain of salt, and that's what I did primarily because you're going to run slower in the second half. That's just how it goes with most runs that you're going to do. You've got all the energy early on, but when you're running, 100k and you're out there for a long time, there's a certain point when the body's going to say, "Oh, I don't want to do this anymore," and so that's where the sort of mental toughness of it kicks in. You've got to train the brain a bit more. Physically, you can do it. It's just whether mentally you can push through that. So from 50 through to, you're bypassing 50, you're getting into the mid to high 70s. And this is where checkpoint, I find your next major checkpoint is. So you between 43 and 78, you're probably going to do some of your best running. Well, I find that I do my best running between those 2 points, because you've got everything worked out, you're comfortable, then now you're pushing through to the hurt zone. That 78, 79, 80k mark, a lot of runners will tell you around the 80k mark, that's where it's going to start to hurt, and it does. You're going to hurt anyway, but ideally if you can hold off for as long as possible, that's a bonus. This is where I like to say that the race begins. At that half marathon to go. So I say that a 100k is a half marathon. Now, that might seem silly, but as I say, when the race begins, when it gets hard. So if you look at a marathon, a marathon might get hard at 32k. So the marathon's a 10k. A half marathon might get hard with 3 to 5k to go. So the half marathon is 3 to 5k. Just as some examples. The build up to that is it? It depends on how well you prepare yourself in the kilometres or miles before that. But this is where the little man who was the backseat pilot is now co-captain with you in the front seat, and you are talking as much as possible to each other. The little man is right in your ear, and you're going back and forward, and they'll say you're leaning forward, this is hurting, that's hurting, but you're going to push through it. This is how we're going to move forward. It's just one foot in front of the other. It doesn't matter if you have to walk, doesn't matter if you have to crawl, doesn't matter about the time that you're running. If you're used to looking at your watch every 5 seconds, the watch is going to feed that little man the incorrect. It's going to feed you some correct information, but really it's going to tell you what you don't want to see. And that's why one of the primary reasons why I don't use it. It's going to trick the little man into making snap decisions that will probably turn out to be the wrong decision, especially if you go, and this is why I go back to setting a low expectation. If I say, I'm going to run 10 hours or 11 hours, and then your watch is saying, you've run this time at this pace, and you can see the progression that you're getting slower and slower, and you go, I'm a little bit under, a little bit over, okay, I'm on it, I'm over it, no. And once you've gone over it, you're not going to make it back, therefore you're starting to just destroy yourself mentally, and you're not going to push as hard as you can to get as close as you can to that time. You're going to go, it's over. And then you just completely switched off. So that's why I say don't focus on that. Just listen to the body. If you snap out of it, you snap out of it. But at that point, you're going to be hurting the whole way. And so you're really working on the positives mentally, just doing whatever you can. That little man's telling you what's going on in the body. It's telling you you're gonna push. You're almost there. There's plenty of crowd support around. It doesn't matter. Hundreds of people who don't even know who you are. They're going to be clapping and cheering you on because you're putting yourself through a decent event. You're out there for hours. This hurts is something that not a lot of people choose to do. But it's a real test. It's a real testing event, and so a lot of credit goes out to the people who do them. So you're pushing, and then A little bit later, once you hit single digits, that as far as distance to go, once again, grain of salt, but that's another sort of tick off the thing. You're down to single figures, you're feeling confident again, motivation's up, the finish is almost there, so you start pick up. Then really you're worried about getting to the finish. You get around that last lap, and then you push for the line. You might have a quick glance at your watch, see how you're going, and you might set a little mini target. So you might want to go, okay, I want to run, like I did. I had a PB before that of 10:28:16, and I looked with about 700 or 800 meters to go, and I thought I can actually get under 9.5 hours here, and I ended up running 9:29:46, a 58.5 minute personal best. Now, that was, that's a big PB over 100 kilometres. But, and that's what I found is that when going back to basics and not focusing so heavily on technology and what everyone, specific training programs and stuff like that. So not saying that they don't work. Having coaches and a lot of people feeding you information and all that, but it is good and it works for a lot of people. Just for me, I'm better off doing my own thing and taking on little bits and pieces of information. But I did a 58.5 minute PB over 100k on going back to the basics of running, just whacking on a pair of shoes and running, not worrying about stats on my wrist or music in my ears and what my phone's telling me and a whole bunch of stuff, just stripping all that clear and going back to basics. So that was certainly a run where everything clicked for me. There wasn't a single negative thing that I could pull out of that race that I think, oh no, this wasn't right, that wasn't right. By setting the low expectation and going back to basics, everything was positive and it was a positive result. If I had said I want to run, 9 hours and I ran 9:29:46 like I did, I would have been disappointed and I would have been kicking myself and I would have started blaming everyone else but myself. But that didn't happen, so that's what I got to. So just to wrap up, that's how I prepare for my 100-kilometre runs. I've given you an experience through my last one. Let me know in the comments bit. If you want to know any more about it, or want me to clarify stuff, or even if you blatantly disagree with what I've said, happy to see those comments. I'll respond. I'll respond to everyone. So I'll put this on. This will obviously be on my YouTube channel, Piss Week Running World. It'll be on Twitter at Piss Week Running, and it'll also be on my offshoot Facebook page of Piss Week Running. So that's my story on it. Hope you found it informative, and I'll see you in the next video.